Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Commander deck techs. I'm releasing a new TMNT Commander deck every Thursday through mid-April when Secrets of Strixhaven drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. Hey, it's the Turtles, and we're gonna have fun with it. So if you have a request for a TMNT Commander you'd like to see me build, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Krang and Shredder, two of the Turtles' greatest foes. Oroku Saki, the Shredder, is the leader of the Foot Clan of Ninja and has a complicated history with Splinter, the Turtles' adoptive father. Krang is an Ultram alien from Dimension X. These two villains are allies at times and co-antagonists at others, depending on the continuity and the storyline, but I remember them fondly from the 1987 cartoon series, particularly with Shredder shouting after the Turtles as they made their escape. "You wretched reptiles," he'd say, then Leo or Donnie would shoot back that they're amphibians, until the one time when Shredder called them amphibians and the Turtles taunted back that they're actually reptiles. The things we remember from childhood. Anyway, I'm excited to show you what I put together for this pair, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I put it at the head of my deck. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 Wraths, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. Krang and Shredder is a 6/7 legendary Ultram human ninja. An Ultram and a human ninja. For 4 and double Dimir mana, which means we can cast it for 4 and double blue, 4 and double black, or 4 a blue and a black. It says, whenever Krang and Shredder enter or attack, each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, which means they'll just keep exiling cards until they hit a spell, and then all of those lands that they exiled, if they exiled any, are just going to stay in exile forever. It also has a disappear ability. At the beginning of our end step, if a permanent left the battlefield under our control this turn, then we can cast a card exiled with Krang and Shredder without paying its mana cost. Sweet. So if you're new to Magic, welcome. I'm going to go over the ideas this deck is built around, both in terms of the mechanics and the way it plays at the table, then I'll go through each card individually and talk about how it works and why it helps our plan. If you have questions, post them in the comments. So when I first read this card, it really worked for me in a thematic way. We have a pair of powerful villains who aren't satisfied with their own strength. They have to steal from our opponents. Every opponent, starting the very moment they arrive, and again, each time they act thereafter. They're brash and impulsive, spending resources they've already accumulated recklessly, all to acquire just a bit more. It's a greedy, seat-of-the-pants way of behaving, perfect for these selfish, short-sighted, quote, masterminds. So that's how our deck plays. We build up a complement of other creatures while we ramp out our commander. When they arrive, the larceny begins, and by that point we probably have 1 or 2 ways to turn their last ability on. Then we play our opponent's best cards against them, and alongside our own powerful permanents, win the game. In order to activate our commander's second ability, we have a host of ways to make our things disappear. Cards that bounce themselves or others, cards that make tokens we can sacrifice, cards that are sack outlets of their own, and even some abuse of the legend rule to ensure something has always vanished and our commander is always able to cast something stolen and spicy. But greed, by its nature, isn't about limits or restraint, so why would we restrict ourselves to just our commander's theft ability? Over a third of our other spells are devoted to taking our opponent's stuff, nabbing their permanents, pulling cards from the top or bottom of their library, raiding their graveyards, and more. Krang and Shredder don't care how they come by their ill-gotten booty, they just want more of it. And that's what this is all about. Amassing more power, more advanced tech, more soldiers to put toward their coming conquest of the table. Each permanent we purloin is another piece of our plan and another reinforcement to our ranks. Krang and Shredder gather our opponent's creatures together, promising them a life of purpose and servitude, a home among their fellow misfits. And they deliver on that promise. As Shredder said in the first live-action movie, "You are here because the outside world rejects you. This is your family. I am your father. I want you all to become full members of the Foot." You'll enjoy this deck if you like knowing that every game will play differently as you claim your opponent's decks for your own purposes, Or, if you like the feeling of being the villain of the pod, a dastardly plotter who makes enemies of your friends by making friends of their forces. So, as usual, this Moxfield list, linked in the video's description, has a considering section at the bottom of it. It is full of cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which did not make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done with this deck and you want to do more of it, or if you have an idea for how to make a little bit of a juke to one side and you want to get ideas for what else you can put into it, that considering section is a great place to start when you build your own Krang and Shredder deck. So we're going to begin with the most fun part of our deck, which is all of these cards that steal. These are cards that, like our commander, give us access to other cards, to our opponent's stuff. So we want to be able to use it, and we've got lots of ways to do so. Outrageous Robbery is our first one. This is for Murders at Karlov Manor. For X and double black, we have an instant that says target opponent exiles the top X cards of their library face down, which means they don't get to look at them. We may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and if we cast a spell this way, we can spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast it. So that's sweet. We just get to steal some cards, they get to remain in exile, and then we can cast them whenever we're ready to, and we treat their mana value as though it were their mana cost in generic mana. Basically, if it's like Cultivate, which is 2 and a green, we treat that as though it just costs 3 generic mana, because we can spend mana as though it were any type. This is a little different than if we spent mana that were any color to cast it, as we'll talk about in a few other cards we have, but I'll get to that in just a moment. Also worth recognizing that it's worth looking at the cards that you steal from your opponent and which of your effects gave them to you. For example, Shredder, our commander, Krang and Shredder, only lets us cast spells that they exiled. So these ones we exiled with Outrageous Robbery, we can cast without having to cast them through Krang and Shredder's disappear trigger at the end. So if we have multiple things exiling cards, we want to make sure we have it clear to our fellow opponents and to ourselves which cards we're able to cast with which effect. It's not that hard to keep track of, it just takes a little practice. Next is Rogue class. This is a class enchantment. For a blue and a black, we get an enchantment that says, whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we exile the top card of that player's library face down, and we can look at it for as long as it remains exiled. Not really that exciting, but at least that is there, and we can use it in a different way soon. So a class enchantment has this first ability when it first comes in. Then at sorcery speed, we can pay 1 a blue and a black to level it up to level 2, and now it has both of these abilities. Once it's level 2, we can pay 2 a blue and a black to level it up to level 3, and now it has all 3 abilities. So a nice mana sink for us, especially going to level 2 before we maybe get our commander out. Or even later is fine too. Because at level 2, all of our creatures have menace. So our commander becoming a 6/7 with menace, pretty solid. And then at level 3, we can play cards exiled with this class, and we may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So that's why we might care about this, which we are still getting to do even after we've leveled it up to level 2 and 3. Notably, this says mana of any color. Now I'll explain the difference now between as though it were mana of any color versus as though it were mana of any type. So I mentioned Cultivate a minute ago. If we see a Cultivate, it's 2 and a green, so mana of any color and mana of any type mean the same thing. It just means we can spend our mana, and we only have to spend 3 of it in whatever colors we want to cast that Cultivate. But what if we saw a Soul Ring instead? Well, it's the same thing, because Soul Ring's cost is generic mana, and we're treating mana as though we're generic anyway, basically, with both of these effects. Mana of any color, mana of any type. But what if the spell requires colorless mana, like Kozilek? I think Kozilek the Great Distortion requires colorless mana. If that's the case, it seems crazy to say, but also obvious, colorless mana doesn't have a color. So that means if we want to cast Kozilek, we can only spend our mana using Rogue class to pay for the generic mana costs of Kozilek. The colorless mana, specifically colorless mana that it requires for us to cast it, Rogue class doesn't fix our mana for that. But Outrageous Robbery does, because it says any type. So it's worth looking at our cards and seeing it's only really for cards that have colorless mana costs, not just generic. But cards like Rogue Class that say mana of any color, we need to be clear that we don't want to cheat, obviously. We don't want to spend our mana for that colorless mana cost if we're not allowed to. But we have a couple of ways in this deck to produce colorless mana, so it won't come up that often anyway. Next up is Cunning Rhetoric. 2 and a black for an enchantment that says whenever an opponent attacks us and or one of our planeswalkers, we have some planeswalkers in this deck, we exile the top card of that player's library, and we can play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and we can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. So that is exactly the same fixing style as Rogue Class. So it's different from Outrageous Robbery. So it doesn't fix our mana perfectly, but it's still pretty great for fixing. And this is not just a way for us to steal cards from our opponent, it's also a deterrent. Our opponents are not going to want to attack into us if they know they're going to lose the top card of their library, and we're going to get to cast it, especially since we're built around casting our opponent's stuff. So yeah, it's a pretty sweet situation that it's not, propaganda or sphere of safety or something like that, but it might deter our opponents, and if we're getting attacked, we might as well get some value out of it anyway. Plus it protects our planeswalkers. Court of Lochthwain is next. This is awesome. 2 and double black for an enchantment that says when it enters, we become the Monarch. Now what is the Monarch? The Monarch is a very simple rule. It's 2 rules to keep track of. One is, if you are the Monarch, at the start of your end step, draw a card. That's pretty good. That's what you want from it. And if a player does combat damage to another player who is the Monarch, the player that dealt that damage becomes the Monarch. So the idea is you want to be the Monarch because it lets you draw a card at your end step. So you try and attack the player that is the Monarch, which encourages players to attack each other, which keeps the game moving. It's a great rule, and you get rewarded with the card. Court of Lochthwain, being an enchantment, we're not going to flash it in, so we're going to get it on our turn, so it's going to draw us a card at our end step, at the very least. Pretty good. In addition, at the beginning of our upkeep, we exile the top card of target opponent's library. We can play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type, perfect fixing, can be spent to cast it. Great, just free theft every turn. But if we're the Monarch, meaning we got to stay the Monarch through that turn cycle, and we started our turn as the Monarch, then until end of turn, we can cast a spell from among cards exiled with this enchantment without paying its mana cost. Free spells. Only one during those turns that we started as the Monarch, but still pretty sweet. Also notable, it says play. Sometimes it says cast that card, sometimes it says play. The only difference to remember there is play means we can play lands if we exile them. That's pretty good. But if we find a spell, we want to be able to cast that anyway. So yeah, so far we've seen Outrageous Robbery says play, so we can play lands or we can cast spells. So does Rogue Class say play, and so does Cunning Rhetoric. Yeah, so far we're able to get lands into play as well that we've stolen. Next up is Garland Royal Kidnapper. This is from Final Fantasy. 2, a blue and a black for a 3/4 legendary human knight. This is a knight? I don't know anything about Final Fantasy, but this guy seems villainous. When Garland enters, target opponent becomes the Monarch. Okay, a little bit different. So that player isn't necessarily going to automatically draw a card from being the Monarch because they're not becoming the Monarch on their turn. Garland's coming in on our turn. And it says whenever an opponent becomes the Monarch, gain control of target creature that player controls for as long as they're the Monarch. This is really cool. It's, hey, you've got a creature I want. I'm going to let you become the Monarch. If nobody attacks you before the end of your turn, or end of your next turn, you'll draw a card. But as long as you are the Monarch, I get that creature. But let's say we do that to, the opponent across the table from us. And then we pass the turn to the opponent to our left, and they attack the opponent across the table. Well, then the one across the table, as long as they get dealt combat damage, they're going to stop being the Monarch, and the one to our left will become the Monarch. Which means we will give back the creature that we stole from the player across the table, meaning they didn't have that creature to block with, so it's likely that they're going to lose the monarchy, and someone else is going to take it from them. And when that opponent takes it from them, we get to steal one of their creatures. So we get to keep moving creatures around the battlefield, and if we are okay with not having creatures, we can attack whoever's the monarch because we just get to draw cards off of that, or a card at least. So yeah, also worth noting, if someone is already the monarch and we play Court of Lochthwain, then we become the monarch without having to attack. Just, that's how the monarchy works. One last thing, creatures we control but don't own get +2/+2 and can't be sacrificed. This seems like a non-bow, and in a way you could think of it as one. It's a pretty classic strategy to steal other people's creatures and then use them as sacrifice fodder, but it's also not really what our deck is doing. So not a big deal that we're not able to do this, and every creature we take is bigger. Not just the ones that we steal with Garland, but any creature that we happen to control but not own. So if we draw a creature from Court of Lochthwain, or Cunning Rhetoric, or Outrageous Robbery, whatever it may be, whenever we cast those creatures, they're going to come into play, and they have +2/+2 and can't be sacrificed. Very cool. Gonti, Lord of Luxury, is next. This is a classic, beloved card, and a really cool character in the story, honestly, the Aetherborn. For 2 and double black, we have a 2/3 legendary Aetherborn Rogue with Death Touch. So 2/3 Death Touch for 4 is already fine. And when Gonti comes in, we look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, and put the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. So we get to look at those cards, they don't get to see them. They don't know what we have face down, and they don't know what went on the bottom. So that's already good. And then we can cast that card as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. Type, so perfect fixing, we're all set there. So Gonti comes in, steals something, and is just a 2/3 Death Touch. Pretty good. 2/3 Death Touch is not very much damage, but it's going to trade with essentially anything that's not indestructible. So a lot of the time, we can just attack with impunity using Gonti, meaning we're able to do combat damage to other players, which means we're able to take the monarchy or trigger anything else that we may need to trigger. Pretty good for Gonti. Next is Grima, Saruman's Footman. I'm not sure if this is Grima or Grima or something else. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan, let me know in the comments how to pronounce this person's name. I'm just going to say Grima for now. This is a 1/4 legendary human advisor for 2 a blue and a black that cannot be blocked. And when it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. So usually we're looking for permanents to steal, but this is pretty sweet too. Maybe we find that Cultivate we were talking about, or maybe we find Path to Exile. You never know. We could cast that card without paying its mana cost, and then that player puts the exiled cards that we didn't cast on the bottom of their library in a random order. Neat. Just a free instant or sorcery. Every turn we attack with Grima. Grima's only doing 1 damage, but we're looking to steal things, and we can do it repeatedly with Grima, and that's pretty sweet. Next is Hostage Taker. Truly, I love this card. Incredible Wayne Reynolds art. The Ixalan set was one of my very favorite sets when it first came out. Just a really cool card. Love it. My very first commander deck was Admiral Beckett Brass, and so had to have this in there. So for 2 a blue and a black, we get a 2/3 human pirate that says when it enters, we exile another target creature or artifact until the Hostage Taker leaves the battlefield, and we can cast that card as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. So what this means is, if we exile an opponent's, I don't know, their Savannah Lions, then that will stay in exile until Hostage Taker leaves the battlefield, or until we cast it. Once it's cast, Hostage Taker can leave the battlefield, and that spell won't revert back to its owner because it's changed zones. So the idea is we play the Hostage Taker for 4 and exile something and hope that either right then or by the time we get back to our next turn, we can cast that spell or that creature that we exiled, creature or artifact that is. It's also neat to be able to use this in a way that you wouldn't expect, which is to say as a way to enable our commander's disappear ability. Because it says exile another target creature or artifact. It doesn't say exile a target creature or artifact an opponent controls. So we can exile one of our own creatures or artifacts. Maybe we have a Wayfarer's Bauble in play, which is just a single generic mana. We have the Hostage Taker come in, we exile the bauble, and then we replay it right away. That means we had a creature or artifact, a permanent of ours, leave the battlefield, which turns on disappear. So that can really be helpful to us. Usually we want to use Hostage Taker in this deck as a way to remove things, to interact with our opponent's board. But we do have ways to recast our spells or bounce our creatures and then recast them again. So Hostage Taker is a great thing for us to like remove a creature from our opponent, cast that creature ourselves, flicker or bounce or otherwise replay the Hostage Taker, and then get that trigger again and steal something else. But it is possible for us to do this with our own stuff to trigger our commander. Pretty neat. Next up is Petty Larceny. This is a sorcery from the Assassin's Creed set. For 3 and a black, we have, ignore this for a moment, a spell that says look at the top 2 cards of target opponent's library and exile those cards face down. We can play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them, and create a treasure token. So we get a free treasure. Pretty good. We don't even need that treasure to fix our mana, because the mana is already perfectly fixed for these cards. But we get to just get 2 cards. That's sweet. 2 cards for 4 mana is already the rate we're paying for Outrageous Robbery. Petty Larceny just gives it to us already and fixes our mana, but also gives us a treasure in the process. Treasures are great. I'm going to say this several times probably in this video, because not only can we crack them for mana, but because we have sacrificed a treasure, a permanent we control has left the battlefield, meaning our commander's disappear ability is online. We're going to see a bunch of cards that enable our commander. Treasures are a big way we do it. So that's all well and good. But Petty Larceny also has free running for 1 and a black. This is an alternate casting cost. We can cast the spell for its free running cost if we dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or a commander. Do we have any assassins in the deck? We don't. But do we have any commanders in the deck? We sure do. So Petty Larceny, like I mentioned, already totally fine on rate compared to Outrageous Robbery, especially since it refunds us for 1 of the mana we spend. But if we're able to do it with our commander, yeah, sounds great. Next is Shark Shredder Killer Clone. What's going on in this? Don't know. For 2 and double black, we have a 4/4 legendary Shark Octopus Ninja with Sneak for 3 and double black. Sneak means we are allowed to cast this spell for its sneak cost, which is technically 1 higher, but there's a good reason for this. If we return an attacking creature we control during the declare blocker step. So that means we can sort of flash in Shark Shredder, and it'll come in tapped and attacking. That's how Sneak works. So only after blocks are declared for one of our attackers, and one of our attackers is not blocked, we've got an unblocked attacking creature during the declare blocker step. Before damage is dealt, we can pay 3 and double black, bounce that attacking creature, the unblocked attacker that we control, to our hand, and put Shark Shredder Killer Clone into play, tapped and attacking. That's how Sneak works. It's kind of like ninjutsu. Either way, whether we sneak it in or we just attack with it, Shark Shredder has first strike, and when it deals combat damage to a player, we put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. It enters tapped and attacking that player. So we want to be able to get this to happen because Shark Shredder has first strike. So it's going to do damage. We're going to steal a creature from that player's graveyard, and now it's going to have the opportunity to do damage as well. And it's going to do that damage because this is going to happen during the damage step. So yeah, pretty good. The reason you want to sneak this in is because maybe we want to rebuy one of our enters triggers like Gaunty or the Hostage Taker, or we just don't want Shark Shredder to get blocked so we can guarantee this effect. Either way, pretty fun. Next we have Ashiok, Nightmare Muse from Theros Beyond Death. This is 3, a blue, and a black for a 5 loyalty Ashiok Planeswalker with 3 abilities. +1 to make a 2/3 blue and black Nightmare creature token with, whenever this token attacks or blocks, each opponent exiles the top 2 cards of their library. They're just gone. Those cards are in exile, and they're exile face up. That's relevant for a reason we'll see in a moment. We can also -3 Ashiok to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, then that player exiles a card from their hand. So this is removal. It's something's going away. That seems pretty good. Yeah. And for -7, if we can get up to 7 loyalty, we can cast up to 3 spells from among face-up cards our opponents own from exile without paying their mana costs. Obviously, these little nightmare creatures are going to put cards into exile face-up from our opponent's libraries. But we're not limited to just those. If we exile some cards from our opponent's library face-up with our commander, we can cast those spells without paying their mana cost. If we do it with any of our other spells that steal things by putting them in exile and giving us access to cast them, those cards are owned by our opponent, and they're in exile, and they're face-up, so we can cast them. We can also do this for cards that our opponent has put into exile themselves. If they cast an impulse draw spell, and they have access to those cards to cast them until the end of their next turn, well, we can use those. We can steal those. If an opponent has cast an Oblivion Ring or a Banishing Light, any effect that says exile this permanent until the permanent that exiled leaves the battlefield, those are face up in an exile, so we can cast those spells ourselves for free. Pretty sweet. Also, it's ultimating a Planeswalker, so yeah, it's going to be sweet. Next up is Azula Cunning Usurper. This is from Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is a 4/4 legendary human noble rogue for 2, a blue, and double black. It has Firebending 2, which means when it attacks, we get to add 2 red mana to our mana pool, and we get to keep that mana in our pool until the end of combat. When Azula enters, target opponent exiles a non-token creature they control, they get to choose it, and then they exile a non-land card from their graveyard. Again, they get to choose which one. But it can't be a land in their graveyard, and it can't be a token creature in play. So those are just exiled. And with Azula, because during our turn, we can cast cards exiled with Azula, and we can cast them as though they had flash. This is pretty sweet. Mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. Perfect mana fixing. This, as though they had flash, is very important, because when Azula attacks, she puts 2 red mana in our pool, so we can use that mana to cast these things that we've exiled. Pretty neat. Next up is Black Cat Cunning Thief from the Spider-Man set. 3 and double black for a 2/3 legendary human rogue villain that says when it enters, we look at the top 9 cards of target opponent's library, exile 2 of them face down, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. We can play the exiled cards for as long as they remain exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast spells this way. So this is a little bit like Big Gaunty. It's the same power toughness as Gaunty. It's 1 more mana, but rather than looking at 4 and exiling 1, we can look at 9 and exile 2. Pretty sweet. I like it. Tasha the Witch Queen is next. This is our other Planeswalker. It's 3, a blue and a black, for a 4 loyalty Tasha Planeswalker with a static ability. Whenever we cast a spell we don't own, we make a 3/3 black demon creature token. These are great sacrifice fodder. They're good chump blockers. We can even attack with them and make terrible attacks with them, so our opponents will block them, so they will die, so a permanent has left the battlefield, so our commander's disappear trigger is online. Pretty great. Tasha, we can +1 to draw a card, and then for each opponent, we exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery from that player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. Page counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by Tasha. Because we can -3 her, and we can cast a spell from among cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. Sweet. So we plus Tasha, draw a card, and get access to a card that we can cast next turn. And then, next turn, maybe we cast that, or maybe we do it again, and we draw a card, put another thing into exile, maybe from a different player's graveyard, and the turn after that, we've got access to 2 things that we can cast with Tasha's -3. And when we do that, it will trigger her static ability, and we get a demon. Also, Tasha can be our commander, but not relevant for this deck. We'd rather play Krang and Shredder. Next up is Dead-Eye Navigator. This card is so cool. For 4 and double blue, we get a 5/5 spirit with Soul Bond. Soul Bond means, or it says, we may pair this character with another unpaired character, we may pair this creature with another unpaired creature when either enters. They remain paired for as long as you control both of them. So the idea is, if we have Krang and Shredder in play, and then we have Dead-Eye Navigator enter, we can pair it with Krang and Shredder if we want to. Or if we could do it the opposite direction. Deadeye Navigator's in first, then we play our commander, they get paired with each other. Or we could pair it with anything else, obviously, like, let's say Hostage Taker. Hostage Taker comes in, we do our thing with it, we cast the spell of the creature or artifact that we stole with it, and now it's just sitting around being a 2/3. Then we play Deadeye Navigator, it comes in, and we pair it with the Hostage Taker. What does it matter if we pair it with it? What does that do for us? Well, as long as the Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has pay 1 and a blue, exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. This is rad, because this is just a flicker effect, or a blink effect, whichever way you like to call it. It lets us either flicker the Navigator to pair it with something different, or flicker the other creature, and then it will come in and the Deadeye Navigator can be repaired with it, or we can choose not to, either way. But the point is, if we do this with, for example, the Hostage Taker, it will re-enter and get its enters trigger again. So will Gaunty, so will Azula, so will Black Cat. So this is a way for us to rebuy our creatures' enters triggers. But it's not just that. It also means we exiled something and then it came back. The fact that it came back doesn't mean we didn't exile it, so it turns on our commander's disappear ability, because we had a permanent we controlled leave the battlefield, and we can do that every turn with Deadeye Navigator and keep getting value out of it. Pretty sweet. We can also reset our commander with this if we want. We can use this protectively because this is at instant speed. So we use this to flicker our commander in response to a removal spell. Pretty good. We could use it to flicker our commander just because we don't have a good attack right now. So we want to, and we already have used up the spells that we've stolen under our commander, or we don't want to cast those, we want different ones. Well, we flicker our commander. Our commander will come in as a new game object, so the previously exiled cards with that commander are now in exile forever. We won't be able to have access to them, but our commander will re-enter and we'll get new ones. So yeah, Deadeye Navigator, extremely useful in this deck. Kind of our MVP. Next is Staff of Eden Vault's Key. This is a 6 generic mana Assassin's Creed legendary artifact that says when it enters, we put target legendary permanent, not named Staff of Eden Vault's Key, from a graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. So there are a lot of legendary permanents in Commander now, and seeing a value creature that happens to be legendary, like Grima, get destroyed is not uncommon. It's also the case that maybe someone loses a legendary enchantment or a legendary artifact, whatever it may be. We get to steal it, put it on the battlefield under our control. If there's not something there, that's okay, because we can still tap Staff of Eden and draw a card for each permanent we control but don't own. This is going to get out of hand, and it won't take that long. So yeah, Staff of Eden, very nice. Next is Agent of Treachery. I love this card from back in M20 Standard. It was absolutely backbreaking and hateful. Just a delight. So this is a 7 mana, 2/3 human rogue for 5 and double blue that says when it enters, we gain control of target permanent. Just a straight up control magic. Any permanent we want. The decks that I build are for pods that have a certain power level, and that power level usually looks down on mana denial. So while we can steal a permanent, meaning stealing a land, probably shouldn't do that. It's just not kind. I mean, you can if you want. You play it however you like to. But what I would do is have the Agent of Treachery steal the scariest, most powerful thing in play, or steal someone's commander to shut down what they're doing with their game plan. That commander changes control, but not zones, so they don't get to put it in the command zone. So yeah, Agent of Treachery, very powerful for us. And we probably don't need to steal land from an opponent if we're able to afford a 7 mana card anyway, just saying. In addition, at the beginning of our end step, if we control 3 or more permanents that we don't own, we draw 3 cards. So eventually, Agent of Treachery becomes a free Ancestral Recall for us at our end step every turn. Pretty good. Arvinox the Mind Flail is next. 4 and triple black, for a 9/9 legendary enchantment creature horror. However, Arvinox isn't a creature unless we control 3 or more permanents we don't own. What this means is Arvinox will come in and become just a legendary enchantment. not a creature and not a horror, because a horror is a creature subtype. So it's just sitting there. It doesn't have this power and toughness. It's just, it can't attack or block because only creatures can do that. So Arvinox just sits there as a 7 mana enchantment. And what does it do? Well, at the beginning of our end step, exile the bottom card of each opponent's library face down. For as long as those cards remain exiled, we can look at them, we can cast permanent spells from among them, only permanent spells, and we can spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Color, not type, so not perfect fixing, but probably pretty close. And we can only cast permanent spells, but that's fine. So Arvinox gives us a free exile of each opponent's library, or a free card from each opponent's library, each of our end steps, and we just have Arvinox sitting there waiting for us to cast those and eventually have 3 permanents or more that we control but don't own. Once we do, Arvinox becomes a creature again, and it's a 9/9 we can attack and block with. Pretty sweet. Next is Dream Harvest from Lorwyn Eclipsed. 5 and double hybrid Dimir mana. So 5 and double blue, 5 and double black, or 5 a blue and a black. This is a sorcery that has each opponent exile cards from the top of their library until they have exiled cards with a total mana value of 5 or greater this way. And until end of turn, we can cast cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. Sweet. So if an opponent exiles 2 lands and a 5-drop, then we get to cast that 5-drop. If they exile 6 lands and 5 1-drops, we get to cast all 5 of those 1-drops. If they exile a 1-drop and a 10-drop, we get to cast both of those, because that is still mana value 5 or greater. It's just they count up the mana value until we exile our way into a total of 5 or a greater total, but it's not going to be able to get more cards after that greater total. However, this is each opponent, so the likelihood that we're going to be getting at least 1 card per player is very good. So 7 mana to get 3 spells at the very least? Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, neat. Alright, next up is Mind's Dilation. This is a card I love to put into decks, and I'm so glad we get to see it here. This is a 7 mana enchantment, 5 and double blue, that says whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn, that's not on each of their turns, it's their first spell each turn. So if opponent A casts a spell on their turn, and then opponent B casts a spell on that same turn, this will trigger for both of them. That player then will exile the top card of their library, and if it's a non-land card, we can cast it without paying its mana cost. So we can whiff on this, but that land is going to just be in exile. So yeah, just like with Dream Harvest, all of these cards that they're exiling that we don't cast just stay in exile, lands or spells we choose not to cast. So yeah, Mind's Dilation can give us some sweet stuff, and likely will basically every turn of our opponents, and maybe sometimes on our turn if they're casting spells then too. Finally, we have Heartless Conscription. This is one of our wraths. It's 6 and double black for a sorcery that exiles all creatures. Just gone. And for each card exiled this way, you may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell, and then we exile Heartless Conscription. So take the entire board, all of the creatures on the board, put them in exile, and we get to cast them. And our mana is fixed perfectly to do so. So all of the theft we could possibly need, and it's, of course, Gaunty on the art. Love it. It does mean we do exile all of our creatures too, it's worth noting, but we can recast them all as though our mana was, with our mana perfectly fixed, so totally fine. A lot of interest triggers from that as well. So yeah, that is our theft section. Let's talk now about how we enable our commander's disappear trigger. That's our enabling section. So we have a bunch of different ways here to either make tokens or have a way for cards to leave the battlefield under our control so that our commander's last ability is online. We're going to start with Supernatural Stamina. A single black for an instant that says, until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains, whenever this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So this is a scam card, named so for the modern archetype. We can use this to push a little extra damage if we want, or maybe make a bad attack or block into a better one. Hopefully trade with an opponent's creature. Or at the very least, protect our commander or protect one of our creatures if it's being hit with a murder or a defenestrate, something like that. Why did I pull defenestrate as an example? It doesn't matter. So our creature will die, so it goes to the graveyard, but then it will come back tapped under its owner's control. That's us. Pretty good. Worth noting, it does say it's owner's control, so if we are targeting a creature with this that we have stolen, then it will come back tapped under its actual owner's control. We won't be able to keep it and have it come back to us because it went to their graveyard, so that's okay. However, it did leave the battlefield under our control, so it will still trigger our commander. This is just a nice way to sort of give some protection, a little bit of damage push, and hopefully bring our stuff back to us while still being in a situation where our permanent has left the battlefield. Wayfarer's Bauble is next. A single generic mana for an artifact that if we pay 2, tap and sack it, we get 2 Rampant Growth. Search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Great, great, great ramp for us, but also ramp that turns on our commander's ability because we're sacrificing it. So yeah, excellent. I just love this card. Play this on turn 1, turn 2, play your second land, crack it, you got a third land, and it's in blue and black. Just so good. Next is Blade of Selves. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact equipment that equips for 4, so a little bit of an expensive cost, but what does it do? It gives the equipped creature Myriad. Myriad says, whenever the creature attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, we can create a token copy that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. Exile those tokens at the end of the combat. So to describe it, if we attack with our hostage taker, let's say, and we attack opponent A, while the hostage taker is equipped with the Blade of Selves. When we attack, we will make a copy of the hostage taker for opponent B, attacking either that opponent or one of their planeswalkers, and another one attacking opponent C, or one of their planeswalkers. Now, both of those hostage taker copies are going to come into play and trigger, so we can steal something. Maybe it's creatures from each of those players they're attacking, so that our tokens can't be blocked and we can do damage. Maybe both of those tokens steal creatures from player A, so that the original hostage taker can't be blocked, so it gets to survive combat. That's pretty good either way. In any case, whether our Myriad tokens die during combat or not, they're still going to get exiled at the end of combat. So we're definitely making tokens and they're leaving the battlefield, which is to say permanents are leaving the battlefield, and so our commander's disappear ability is turned on. Worth noting though, Myriad tokens are not non-legendary. So if we put this on a legendary creature like Grima or like our commander, we will make those token copies and then we will have to get rid of all of them due to the legend rule. We could get rid of the original, but we don't want to do that. Because again, you can only ever have one legendary permanent in play of a single name. If you have any legendary permanents in play with that same name, you have to put all but one of them in the graveyard. So still, even that means permanents left the battlefield under our control, and that triggers or turns on our commander's disappear ability. Deadly Dispute is next. 1 and a black for an instant with, as an additional cost, sacrifice an artifact or creature. That is what we're doing. This is a sack outlet. It's turning on our commander by requiring us to sack an artifact or creature. And what do we get for it? We get to draw 2 cards and we make a treasure token. I've already mentioned treasure tokens are so important in this deck because they too can turn on our commander's disappear ability. So yeah, Deadly Dispute is a great option for us here. Very nice if we can use this on like a Myriad token, because then that token's going to go away anyway. We might as well get some value out of it. Or, for example, if we've got this in hand and we really want to, if an opponent is about to kill a creature and we want to hit it with supernatural stamina, we could then let's say we've got a creature in play, an opponent's targeting it with a go for the throat. We cast supernatural stamina on it, we know it's going to die anyway, and we know it's going to come back. And since it's going to die anyway, we might as well sacrifice it with Deadly Dispute. So Deadly Dispute lets us sacrifice it, it will trigger this delayed trigger from Supernatural Stamina, making it come back tapped under our control. Our opponent's spell is going to fizzle because it has no legal target, because the creature has come back and is so therefore a new game object. And we draw 2 cards and make a treasure. Incredible. Next is Fake Your Own Death. It is basically Supernatural Stamina for 1 more mana, and it makes a treasure. So for 1 and a black, we get an instant that says until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and you create a treasure. So the same thing as Supernatural Stamina, but we're paying a mana into it to get a treasure out of it. The treasure is our rebate, and that lets us not only use Fake Your Own Death to bring back something that we were going to lose, thereby, if it's on our turn, enabling Disappear, but it gives us that treasure, which we can use to enable Disappear on a different turn. Foot Chopper is next. This is from the Ninja Turtles Commander deck. 1 and a black for an equipment that says, when it enters, we make a 1/1 black ninja creature token and then attach this equipment to it, and the equipped creature has flying, and it equips for 2. So it comes in and sort of is 1 and a black, make a 1/1 flyer. But then it will leave behind the equipment later if we needed to. And it says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it, and if you do, draw cards equal to its power. So for 2 mana, we get a 1/1 flyer that when it does combat damage, we lose that flyer, draw a card, and have this equipment. We don't have to sacrifice it, however. So we can certainly put this on our commander, and now our commander has flying. That's pretty great for a 6/7 attacking creature. And this is what's especially nice is we can put this on any of our tokens or any of our other creatures, and we can use this as a sacrifice outlet for it, thereby enabling our commander's Disappear ability. Yeah, pretty good. Plus we get cards out of it. Gilded Pinions is next. 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 2 and gives the equipped creature flying, and when it comes in, we make a treasure. Very much like some of the other things we've seen. Just a pretty nice way to have evasion on our commander or whatever we need it on, and also come in with a little rebate that we can crack on a different turn, or even that same turn, to turn on Disappear. Mind Stone is next. This is really more of a mana rock for us, because for 2 mana, we get an artifact that taps for colorless. We want to use this for our acceleration. But we can pay 1, tap, and sack it to draw a card. So this is a good way to turn on our commander's Disappear ability. What we usually do this for is to cash it in late in the game when we don't need the mana anymore and we just want to draw a card, or if sometimes, our deck is stalling out and we just need to draw a card desperately, Mind Stone is a cheap way to do so. In this deck, the third way to use it is just to turn on that Disappear trigger. Next, we have Obsessive Pursuit. This is from Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is 1 and a black for an enchantment that says when it enters, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we lose a life and we make a clue token. Clues are artifacts with pay 2 and sack and draw a card. So every turn we're losing a life and we're getting a token that we can sacrifice to not just turn on our commander's Disappear ability, but also get a card out of it too. So we're paying 2 mana and a life to get a card and turn on our commander every turn. Amazing. Don't think about that phrasing too much. It also says whenever we attack, we can put X 1/1 counters on target attacking creature, where X is the number of permanents we've sacrificed this turn. Specifically sacrificed, not just that have left the battlefield. And if X is 3 or greater, that creature gains lifelink until end of turn. So if we make this clue and we have 2 treasures, we sack both treasures to pay for the clue, and we sack the clue to draw a card. We have then drawn a card, and we go to combat and we put 3 counters on a creature, and that creature gets lifelink until end of turn. Not going to happen that often in this deck. This is kind of enough for us, but it's really great to have the ability to pump something up and maybe, sometimes have lifelink. Next up is Rat King Verminister. This is 1 and a black for a 1/1 legendary rat avatar with its own Disappear ability. Triggers at the end step, just like our commander. Says if a permanent left the battlefield under our control this turn, we make a 1/1 black rat creature token and put a 1/1 counter on the Rat King. So we get to make a little token, which we can use as sacrifice fodder, and the Rat King gets bigger. That's pretty good. But how do we use this to enable our commander? And, of course, the Rat King himself. Well, we can use it to sack the rats to our other sack outlets. We can use it just attacking with the rats. That's fine. Our opponents might just block. That's okay. But we can also tap the Rat King and sacrifice 3 of these rats to return a creature card and all other cards with the same name as that card from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. All other cards with the same name as that card is not relevant in this deck. This is really for like a rat colony deck or Relentless Rats, that kind of thing. It's a cool deck that you can certainly build, but it's not what we're doing here. However, just tap this and sack 3 rats doesn't just turn on our commander and the Rat King itself, it also lets us just reanimate something. That's great. Next up is the Burnished Heart. Really love the Burnished Heart. Look at this elk. So beautiful. For 3 generic mana, we get a 2/2 artifact creature, elk, that says pay 3 and sack it to search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So explosive vegetation. Normally that's 3 and a green. This is 3 and 3, so we can split it up over 2 turns if we need to. The usual trick with the Burnished Heart is, quote unquote, is you play this, you wait until an opponent is attacking with a non-trampling creature, you block with the heart, and then sack the heart in response so that creature still doesn't do any damage to you and you get some lands. In this deck, we can certainly do that, but we want our stuff to leave the battlefield on our turn so that our commander's disappear ability is active. So Burnished Heart's a good way to do that. Play it for 3, crack it for 3, same turn or the next turn, get a little bit of ramp, and then we're all set with our commander. Fire Navy Trebuchet is another Avatar The Last Airbender card. 2 and a black for a 0/4 artifact creature wall with defender and reach. So it blocks flyers, that's alright. And it says whenever we attack with any creatures we have, we make a 2/1 colorless construct artifact creature token with flying named Ballistic Boulder. And it's tapped and attacking, and we sack it at the beginning of the next end step. So this essentially says, whenever you attack, your commander's disappear trigger is online. Because either the Ballistic Boulder is going to do damage to our opponent and then be sacrificed at the end step, or, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm misspeaking. Forgive me. We are sacrificing that token at the beginning of the next end step. So that's actually not necessarily going to turn our commander on. It can, because this is a free 2 damage we're doing every time we attack, as long as our opponent has no flying blockers. But really, if our opponent does have a flying blocker or any ability to defend against this at all, it's only got 1 toughness. So it leaves the battlefield no matter what. Hopefully prior to the end step, so that we can get our commander's ability online. But I know you're wondering, well, it says at the beginning of the next end step we're sacrificing it, right? So why does that not interact with our commander? Here's why. Because this also triggers at the beginning of the end step. So it's happening at the same time, sacrificing that boulder and this disappear thing going on the stack. And if you're saying, but wait, can't I stack those triggers so that the boulder resolves first, leaves the battlefield, and then we've qualified for the disappear trigger? Technically no, because this is an intervening if clause. What this means is this ability will trigger at this time, but only if this quality is met, this condition. If a permanent has not left the battlefield under our control this turn, at the beginning of our end step, this ability won't trigger at all. So this is the trigger condition, this is the intervening if condition, and this is the result. We need this to happen prior to the end step in order for this to trigger at the beginning of the end step. So worth noting that our Fire Navy Trebuchet is going to be able to enable our game plan if this repeatable token gets blocked. It's likely to get blocked, but if it doesn't, that's okay. We're doing just free damage with our 0/4 wall, which is a solid defender even in Commander. We will lose this at the end step no matter what, and that's fine. We don't need all these burning rocks just piling up around our deck. So next up is Midnight Clock. This is 2 and a blue for an artifact that taps for blue, or we can pay 2 and a blue to put an hour counter on this artifact. Hour counters are not, they don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by the clock. but it doesn't require us to tap it to put that hour counter on it, so we can tap it for blue and use that blue as part of this cost. But we don't have to, because at the beginning of each upkeep, not just ours, but everyone's upkeep, we put an hour counter on this artifact. So all we have to do is just wait. And each turn cycle with 3 opponents, we will have 4 hour counters on it, after our upkeep. And when the 12th hour counter is put on this artifact, we shuffle our hand and graveyard into our library, draw 7 cards, and then exile the Midnight Clock. So Midnight Clock will leave the battlefield that turn, and so it has brought our commander's Disappear ability online, and we have a fresh 7. That's pretty good. So it's a mana rock for a little bit, and we can accelerate it, but we kind of don't want to in this deck because we want it to turn our commander's ability on our turn. So that's fine. For a couple of turn cycles, we get a mana rock. Pretty good. Skullport Merchant is next. This is originally from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. 2 and a black for a 1/4 dwarf citizen that says when this creature enters, create a treasure token. There we go, that's enough for us. But it also says 1 and a black and sack a creature or a treasure specifically, and we can draw a card. We've got lots of treasures in this deck. Usually they can just turn themselves on, but if we need to draw a card off of it, we're still sacking the treasure, so we're still getting our Disappear ability online. Or we can just sack a creature. Maybe one of these tokens that we have so many of. Yeah. Next we have Victimize. 2 and a black for a sorcery that says choose 2 target creature cards in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. It is worth noting, we have to choose those cards in our graveyard in order to cast this. We have to have at least 2 creatures in the graveyard. We've got to choose 2 of them, and we cannot bring back the creature we sacrifice because it's not in the graveyard when we have to choose our targets. Just so you know. But this is pretty good for us. This is, unless we have Garland in play, one of the ways we can use to cast an opponent's cheap creature once we've stolen it somehow, and then sack it to bring back 2 of our good creatures. Pretty good. Coin of Mastery is next. Really like this card from the Ninja Turtles commander deck. 4 generic mana for an artifact that says each creature we control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it for each mana from an artifact source spent to cast it. An artifact source might be something like Midnight Clock. That's an artifact. However, Treasure is also an artifact, even though it's not on the battlefield anymore once we add that mana. That mana still came from an artifact source, so we can use it to get counters on our stuff as we cast those things. It doesn't have to be our stuff either. It can be our opponent's stuff that we're casting with those treasures, or with the Midnight Clock, or any of our other mana rocks like our Soul Ring. But Coin of Mastery also lets us tap it and make a treasure token. So in a way, this is a 4 mana rock, because we tap it for a treasure, and then tap and sack the treasure for mana. So this is a mana rock that also turns on our commander's ability every turn when we use it for mana. Or if we don't need it for mana, we still tap it, at least during the end step of our opponent to the right, and we get that treasure and just get to bank it until next time. Pretty great. Next is Petty Larceny. We've already seen Petty Larceny and how it makes us a treasure, which will be a good enabler for us. Shredder Shadow Master, we have yet to see. This is 3 and double black for a 5/5 legendary human ninja that says whenever Shredder attacks a player, for each other opponent, we create a token that's a copy of Shredder, tapped and attacking that player, except it isn't legendary, and sacrifice those tokens at the end of combat. So this is very much like Myriad with 3 differences. It's not an exile at the end of combat, it's a sacrifice, so that's relevant to the things that we care about for sacrificing things. It makes the token copies non-legendary, which means we don't have to legend rule them away the moment they come in, they still get to attack and do damage. And it only works when we attack a player, and the copies only come in attacking other players. We can't have these go at planeswalkers the way we would with Myriad. All worth noting. In addition, whenever Shredder deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life, rounded up. So it works the way you want it to. If they've got an odd number of life, they're going to have the smaller half left over. Now, if you're new to Magic, and you're not familiar with the way the naming conventions work on Magic cards, you might look at this and say, oh wow, our commander is Krang and Shredder, so this being in play will let this happen with our commander, right? Even this too, because it says when Shredder attacks. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. when a card refers to itself by name, it specifically means this creature or this permanent. You could replace that word with those words. So Shredder Shadow Master, its triggers only apply to itself, not to our commander, even though it's the same character fictionally. Shredder's second ability doesn't even apply to its myriad copies, or the tokens that it makes up here. However, they have their own instance of this text on them, so it doesn't have to apply to them. Their own version of it will. So yeah, just so you know, it's not as exciting as it could have been, but yeah, that's how the legend rule works, and the naming, or not the legend rule, but the naming conventions of Magic cards. Next we have Side Quest Hunt the Mark from Final Fantasy. This is 3 and double black for an enchantment that says when it enters, we destroy up to one target creature. So kind of an expensive removal spell, but unconditional removal, pretty good. And at the beginning of our end step, if a creature died under an opponent's control this turn, we make a treasure token. And if we control 3 or more treasures, we transform this enchantment. So the reason this is in this section before I move on is not because it's destroying a creature, although we can destroy our own creature with it. That would turn on our commander's disappear ability. It's because this makes treasures every turn, every one of our end steps where one of our opponent's creatures died. That's not likely to, or it's not unlikely to happen pretty regularly. So we get to make these treasures, which, as I've already explained, can turn on disappear pretty well. But if we have 3 or more treasures, including the one we just created at our end step, we transform it into Yasmet, Ultimate Mark. If you're a Final Fantasy lover, let me know how this is pronounced in the comments below. I don't know Final Fantasy very well. This is a legendary dragon that's a 5/6 with the ability pay 1 and a black and sack a creature or an artifact, and Yasmet gains indestructible until end of turn, tap it. This is another way we can turn on disappear. So it does say tap it. So if we do this on an opponent's turn, we could do this after blocking, and it doesn't matter that it's tapped, it's already blocked. But if we do this on our turn, we want to do this after it's attacked. So it's already tapped, so it doesn't matter. It does not require it to be untapped for this to happen. Yeah. Finally, in this section, we have Deadeye Navigator again. Like I've already said, we can use its ability that it gives to itself and its bonded creature, whatever creature it's paired with. It can flicker itself or that creature. And flickering it is it leaving the battlefield, so as long as we do it before the end step, disappear will be online. And that is our enabling section. Oh hey, did you just like the video? Nice, thanks a lot. I'm just kidding, you don't have to like the video. I appreciate you being here and watching it anyway. In any case, let's move on now to these sections of support for our game plan. We're going to start with our card advantage section. As usual, I have tagged this as draw. It doesn't mean all these cards do the draw card action. It just means all these cards give us access to other cards we can play or cast. So yeah. Baleful Strix does draw us a card though. This is a wonderful card. A 1/1 artifact creature bird for a blue and a black. It has flying, it has death touch, and when it comes in, we draw a card. Love this card. So it comes in, replaces itself immediately, and is a perfect blocker. It's going to kill anything that's not, indestructible if an opponent attacks into it. And it's just a 1/1 bird, so they don't want to trade their good creature for a 1/1 bird. We can also attack with this, and they don't want to block it because it's just 1 damage. What do they care? Which means we can use our sneak spells with Baleful Strix. We can get Shark Shredder into play by bouncing Baleful Strix because it's not likely to be blocked. Great card in this deck. Deadly Dispute, we've already seen, draws us 2 cards. Extraordinary Journey is next. Double X and double blue for an enchantment that says when it enters, we exile up to X target creatures. For each of those cards, its owner may play it for as long as it remains exiled. Now I know you're thinking, well, doesn't that mean permanents leave the battlefield? And can't we hit our own permanents with it? So doesn't this turn on our commander's disappear ability? Yes, it does. But this is a removal spell. I didn't want to put this in every section, or put the cards that were just for removal, basically, in the enabling section as well, because I thought it might be a little bit confusing. So it is something we can do. We can, take our Gaunty and exile it, and then play it again from exile. That's fine. That will be great for us because it means one of our things has left the battlefield. But we really want to use this. Obviously, we use it however we wish to. But the intention behind this is as a removal spell. We bounce something, or not bounce, but I guess exile something that an opponent controls so that we're able to get in with our commander or our other attackers by clearing the way for them. If we can do that on multiple opponents' playmats, that's even better, because whenever one or more non-token creatures enter, if one or more of them entered from exile or was cast from exile, we draw a card, but only once each turn. So this is great for us, because on our turns, we're likely casting something from exile most, if not every turn, thanks to all of our theft effects. But this is happening as well. So if we've exiled some of their creatures, they're going to recast them. Those will be cast from exile on those opponents' turns. So we'll draw a card. If we can hit it on each opponent's board, we're going to be getting a card on each of those turns. But this is also true for things like if I flicker a creature, or if an opponent flickers a creature, then it's going to be entering from exile. If an opponent has Banishing Light or Oblivion Ring on one of their creatures and they remove it, that creature will return and it will be entering from exile. So we'll draw a card. This happens a lot more than you expect it to, even without being set up on its own, simply because of how much the exile zone is used these days in spells just all across the colors, particularly in things like red and white. So it is worth noting that we can just cast this for double blue with X being 0, so a total of double blue. So it won't do this, but it's still going to be there to draw us cards when we need it to. We've seen the Foot Chopper. It lets us sacrifice the equipped creature once that creature does combat damage to a player, and draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power. Mind Stone, we've already seen. We can cash it in for a card if we need to. Obsessive Pursuit makes us clue tokens, which we can crack for cards. Pretty good. Decode Transmissions is next. This is our divination for the deck. It's 2 and a black for a sorcery that lets us draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. But it has a Void ability. Void is similar to, but not the same as, Disappear. It's if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, instead we draw 2 cards and each opponent loses 2 life. Notably, it says if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn. Doesn't say under our control. So we can remove an opponent's creature and Void is online. Also, what is warped? Do you have any idea? Well, you will soon. We have 1 card in the deck that does warp, and we will talk about it when we get to it. But just notably, this is 3 mana to draw us 2 cards, and it either costs us 2 life, or it costs each opponent 2 life, depending on if we've already got our Disappear enabled for the turn. Next we have Gravelighter. This is 2 and a black for a 2/2 spirit with flying that says when it enters, we draw a card if a creature died this turn. So similar to Decode Transmissions, gives us a little benefit if we've already gotten something dead, whether it's ours or an opponent's. In addition, or rather otherwise, each player sacrifices a creature of their choice. So what we can do is play the Gravelighter and sacrifice it to its own trigger, assuming a creature hasn't already died this turn. If we do that, we're in a good situation because we're not sacrificing it unless every player is sacrificing a creature. So this is a little bit of a removal spell. It's an edict. So this is good for us to turn on our commander's Disappear ability and to draw cards if we've already got it turned on, basically. So yeah. In a particular way, obviously, with the creature having died. But yeah. Midnight Clock draws us a fresh 7 once it hits the 12th hour. Skullport Merchant lets us sack a creature or a treasure, draw a card. Court of Lochthwain makes us the Monarch, which draws us a card. Elegy Acolyte is 2 and double black for a 4/4 human cleric with lifelink, and whenever one or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card and lose a life. So it does mean we only get to draw a card and lose a life no matter how many creatures we have hit a player, but if we have our creatures hit multiple players, then this will trigger multiple times, and we get a card and lose a life for each player that took that combat damage. So nice, even though it's costing us a little bit of life, it's worth it to get a card, and if we happen to do that damage with the Acolyte, well, it's got lifelink, so we're all set. In addition, this has a Void ability as well. At the beginning of our end step, so it triggers at the same time as our commander. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, we make a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. This is good sack fodder, it's a good chump blocker, we can attack with it and just hope it gets blocked and dies, thereby turning on Disappear, but also turning on Void, meaning we'd get a second robot, or another robot that turn, because we lost the prior one. Pretty good. We've seen Tasha, she can +1 her to draw a card, in addition to some other stuff. Staff of Eden lets us tap to draw cards for each permanent we control but don't own, and Agent of Treachery draws us 3 cards at our end step if we control 3 or more permanents we don't own. Lots of ways to get cards in hand. So that is our card advantage section. Let's talk now about our interaction section. I'm sorry, our acceleration section, which as usual I've just tagged as ramp. We're running Sol Ring. It's a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless mana. I'm saying this all as though you've never seen Sol Ring before. It's, put it in your deck, especially when you're running a 6 mana commander. Wayfarer's Bauble, we've already talked about, lets us rampant growth and also turns on Disappear. Arcane Signet is 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. In this deck, that is blue or black. So this is a 2 mana untapped mana rock that makes all of our colors perfect. Deadly Dispute makes us a treasure when it resolves. Great, we can use that. Dimir Signet is 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for a blue and a black, but only if we pay a mana into it. So we have to have mana to activate the Signet, but it does make 2 mana. So we're, activating 2 mana sources, whatever we're paying this from, and the Signet as well, and getting 2 mana, so it's filtering for us. Pretty good. Fake Your Own Death, just like Deadly Dispute, makes us a treasure. Well, I guess not just like. It makes us a treasure when the creature we targeted with it dies this turn. Gilded Pinions makes us a treasure when it just comes in. Mind Stone taps for colorless mana. Solid. Talisman of Dominance is a 2 mana rock that taps for colorless or taps for blue or black if we're willing to let it do a damage to us. This ability is fantastic. It means we're only going to tap this for colorless mana unless we need blue or black, by which I mean getting that blue or black is the difference between being able to cast a spell or not. So it's almost like, would you pay a damage to reduce the cost of a spell by a colored pip? For sure. That's incredible acceleration. Spending 1 life for mana, I mean, that's channel. That's definitely overstating a talisman, but a very good effect that lets us. It's an untapped rock that makes our colors and doesn't cost us too much, even if we need it in those colors. We've seen the Burnished Heart. It lets us explosive vegetation when we sacrifice it. Midnight Clock taps for blue for as long as it's on the battlefield. Skullport Merchant comes with a treasure. Coin of Mastery makes treasures every turn we tap it. Petty Larceny makes a treasure when it resolves. And Side Quest lets us make a treasure at our end step if a creature died under an opponent's control this turn. Each turn that happens. Great. So that is our acceleration section. And now we're going to our interaction section. Jumped the gun a minute ago, but here it is now. So Accursed Marauder is 1 and a black for a 2/1 zombie warrior that says when it enters, each player sacrifices a non-token creature of their choice. Of course, we want to sacrifice one of our tokens, or rather, not one of our tokens. We want to sacrifice the Marauder. So it comes in, every player has to sacrifice something that they actually paid mana for, but we get something out of it, which is that removal of things that our opponents paid mana for, as well as Accursed Marauder has now turned on the Disappear conditions, because it's left the battlefield. Extraordinary Journey, we've already talked about. It can exile, at least temporarily, our opponent's creatures. Runaway Together is 1 and a blue for an instant that says choose 2 target creatures controlled by different players, return those creatures to their owner's hands. So it's double unsummon, as long as both creatures are controlled by different players. This is excellent because it's not just a way for us to say, oh, you've got a 5 mana commander and you've got like a 7 or 8 mana giant monster, bounce them both, you got to replay them. We can also have one of these creatures be controlled by us. So not only can we rebuy something like Gaunty or our hostage taker, or even our commander, but also when we do that, something's left the battlefield under our control this turn, if we do this on our turn, and so we have turned on Disappear. We've seen Gravelighter. It has everyone sacrifice a creature if something hasn't already died this turn when it comes in. Plague Crafter, much like Gravelighter and Accursed Marauder, is an Edict creature. 2 and a black for a 3/2 Human Shaman. When it enters, each player, including us, sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, and then each player who can't discards a card. So everyone's going to lose something, unless somebody has no cards in hand and no creatures or planeswalkers in play. But the Plague Crafter is a 3/2 for 3, which is pretty sweet. So if we're able to sacrifice something like a token creature, then we can keep it in play and use it in combat. Next, we have Shredder's Technique. Shredder's on the card, we got to use this technique. For 2 and a black, we get a sorcery that has Sneak for a black. So we can bounce an unblocked attacker that we control during the declare blocker step to just cast this at instant speed for a single black. And it says destroy target creature or enchantment, and if an enchantment was destroyed this way, we lose 2 life. I want to mention, because we've seen Arvanox in this deck, which is an enchantment creature, if we target an enchantment creature with this, that is still an enchantment, so we still lose the 2 life, even though we were killing a creature with it. Yeah, a nice unconditional removal spell. Swift Demise is next. This is so cool. This is 2 and a black for an instant that says it deals 1 damage to target creature, then destroy each creature that you don't control that was dealt damage this turn. Amazing. This card, if we block an opponent's big attack, every one of their creatures that survives that combat but takes damage, plus 1 more creature, is going to die. And that creature that we target with this damage doesn't even have to be one of the ones that attacked. But then what if we attack? Well, their blocks might be pretty good, but we don't care about our creatures leaving. We want to turn on our commander's ability. So post-combat, whichever creatures have taken damage this turn, one of them, or one additional one, plus all of them are going to die. But even better is opponent A attacks opponent B. They make some trades, but both of them have a bunch of creatures that have taken damage. We target opponent C, one of their creatures, with this 1 damage. It dies, and then all the creatures that opponents A and B have that have already taken damage this turn also die. This is the Big Daddy version of You Are Already Dead. I love it. We've seen the Hostage Taker. We know how that is an interactive spell. We've seen all of these. Ashiok can bounce something and then make that player exile a card. Azula comes in and exiles a non-token creature an opponent controls. They get to choose it, as well as one of the non-land cards from their graveyard. And Side Quest enters and we destroy up to 1 target creature. So some good interaction here. We are running 2 Wraths in our deck. We've seen Heartless Conscription, exiles everything, but we get to cast them from exile. And Game Over is 3 and double black for a sorcery that destroys all creatures. Just pretty simple. Destroy all creatures. If we've got one of our scam effects, we can maybe bring our commander back with that. But we're paying 5 mana for this. Unless a player's life total is less than or equal to half their starting life total, in which case it costs 2 less. So 1 and double black. If we are spending a bunch of life, which we are in several ways in this deck, or if an opponent's like, hey, we're tired of you stealing our stuff, we're going to attack you. Well, get us down to 20 or less, or get anyone down to that, and we can wipe the board and get back to it. So those are our Wraths, and that is all of the support sections in our deck. We're going to talk now about some supplemental sections. These are things that aren't meant to prop up our game plan. They're ways that we help our game plan sort of develop itself. We're going to start with our Payoffs. These are all cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. For example, Extraordinary Journey wants us to cast things from exile and to have cards enter from exile. So we're going to get cards when that happens. Obsessive Pursuit wants us to sacrifice permanents in order to turn on our commander's disappear ability, particularly clues, which thereby this gives us 1/1 counters on our attacking creatures, making our commander or our other creatures bigger. The Rat King has a disappear ability, which we're trying to do those anyway. We're trying to turn on disappear for our commander, so getting a counter on the king and a free rat token in the process is pretty good. Decode Transmissions and Elegy Acolyte similarly have void triggers. So if we've had non-land permanents leave the battlefield, then we get to drain our opponents rather than losing life ourselves, and we get to make a robot at our end step. Gravelighter, again, cares about things dying, so rather than having each player sacrifice a creature, including us, we might just draw a card if we've already had something die this turn. Ninja Teen, we have yet to see. 2 and a black for a class enchantment. We've got another class here. This is level 1. Whenever a creature we control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses a life. Our creatures are going to be leaving the battlefield a lot because we want to sacrifice them or bounce them or something along those lines. For level 2, creatures we control have +1/+0 and have menace. And level 3 is a single black. Creature cards in your graveyard have sneak for 3 and a black. And you may cast creature spells from your graveyard using their sneak abilities. So this is really cool. If we're attacking with something and it's not blocked, before damage, right then we can sneak in one of our creatures by bouncing that creature that's attacking and not blocked. So that means we have bounced a creature to our hand, which has enabled us to have Disappear turned on. In fact, this should be under the enabling section now that I think about it. Sorry, I don't normally like to do this during, recording, but it's important to make sure it's correct. Oh no, where have we gone? Back to our payoffs. Sorry. So Ninja Teen helps us in several different ways. We've seen LG Acolyte, Tasha the Witch Queen, cares about us casting spells we don't own, because that lets her make a 3/3 black demon creature token when we do. And Arvinox becomes a creature, or stops not being a creature once we control 3 or more permanents we don't own. So there we go. Similarly, we have a synergy section. This is our synergy section. These are cards that, rather than payoffs, which care about us getting rewards for doing the things we were going to do, these are cards that sort of help us do those things. So Garland gives all of the creatures we control but don't own +2/+2. Staff of Eden lets us draw a number of cards equal to the permanents we control but don't own. And Agent of Treachery draws us 3 cards if we have 3 or more permanents we control or we don't own. So those are all the ones that sort of help us out or sort of reward us for or help us out with what we're doing already. These other 3 cards are about doubling our triggers, or the triggers themselves. So Starfield Vocalist is a 3/4 human bard for 3 and a blue. It says, if a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent we control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So this is our Panharmonicon effect on a person. So this is working for our Gonti, for our Hostage Taker, for Azula, for our Commander. Starfield Vocalist is going to let us get more things stolen, and that's what we want to do. Starfield Vocalist also has Warp for 1 and a blue. Warp means we can cast it for 1 and a blue rather than 3 and a blue, and it comes in and it just is in play. And then at the end of our turn, we exile it, and then we can cast it from exile on a later turn. So this also turns on our Void abilities because it cares about permanents leaving play or something being warped. Starfield Vocalist is our only warp creature, so we can turn those Void abilities on with this. But generally, it's just here to help out all of our enters triggers, which will still help out the enters triggers of something we steal. That's good too. Similarly, we have Virtue of Knowledge. This is an adventure card. If you haven't seen adventure cards before, the way this works is, this is 4 and a blue for an enchantment that says, if a permanent entering causes a triggered ability of a permanent we control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. It includes that permanent itself, obviously. So this is another sort of Panharmonicon type effect. Pretty good, but it also has a little instant adventure spell built into it called Vantress Visions. This is 1 and a blue for an instant that says copy target activated or triggered ability we control, and we can choose new targets for the copy. So the way this works is, in our hand, we can either cast Vantress Visions, and then the spell goes to exile, and we can cast Virtue of Knowledge from exile that turn or a different turn. Or we can just cast Virtue of Knowledge, and we don't get Vantress Visions. The adventure has to come first. If we just play the enchantment, we don't have access to the instant, unless we somehow bounce Virtue of Knowledge and try and cast it again from there. So yeah, what we want to do is copy our commander's ability, or any of our creatures that steal things. And then any of our interest triggers are going to get copied anyway once we've got the Virtue in play, so that's pretty good. Thanks, Eldraine. Finally, we have a Room enchantment. This is Mirror Room, Fractured Realm. The way this works is, this is from Duskmourn. It works like this. When it's in our hand, we can cast either side of it. These are called doors. That's what the halves of it are called. Let's say we cast Mirror Room. So on the stack, this is going to be a spell that costs 2 and a blue and is an enchantment. And when it enters, we unlock this door, and this door is locked. So it will come in, it will do its effect, and then at sorcery speed, we can pay the casting cost of the other door that's locked to unlock it. Make sense? So we can either cast Fractured Realm first, it'll enter as that, and we can unlock the Mirror Room, or we can cast the Mirror Room, it comes in unlocked, Fractured Realm is locked, and we can unlock it for its casting cost later. And eventually, it will have both names and both text once they're both unlocked. So Mirror Room is 2 and a blue. When we unlock it, meaning when we already have Fractured Realm in play and we pay to unlock it with 2 and a blue, or when we cast it and it enters, we make a token that's a copy of target creature we control, except it's a reflection in addition to its other types. So we can use this to turn on our commander's disappear ability. All we have to do is copy a legendary creature, and then legend rule that copy away. It will have been under our control and will have disappeared. Will have gone, will have left the battlefield. So that turns disappear on. Or we can just have this come in as the copy of a great creature that we have in play, like Gaunty. Oh, that's legendary. Maybe we do our, I keep saying Hostage Taker, but it's a good example. Do the Hostage Taker, get its interest trigger, and we're doing fine there. Or we make a copy of something that we've stolen, and that's pretty great too. And once we have Fractured Realm, which is 5 and double blue, it says if a triggered ability of a permanent we control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. So it's any triggered ability. So that's our commander's triggered abilities from entering, from attacking, whatever we may need. Azula's Firebending will trigger twice if we do this. Pretty good. That is our synergy section. Let's talk now about our evasion. These are just a couple of ways that we can make mostly our commander, but all of our creatures, a little evasive so they can attack in. Foot Chopper gives the equipped creature flying. Gilded Pinions does as well. Rogue class at level 2 gives all of our creatures menace, and Ninja Teen at level 2 gives all of our creatures +1/+0 in menace. You can tell these were designed 5 years apart. We also have Smoke Shroud. This is 1 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature and gives that creature +1/+1 and flying. We want to put this on our commander if we can. And it says when a ninja we control enters, we can return this card from our graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. So if we get this into play before our commander comes in, and then do some attacking, and someone is able to kill that creature, well, Smoke Shroud will go to the graveyard. Then when our commander comes in, we get to put it directly into play on our commander, and now it's +1/+1 and flying. That just seems like a lot of fun. Do we have other ninjas in the deck? We do. We've got 2 other ninjas. So that will be the other Shredder and Shark Shredder. So every Shredder is a ninja. So it is possible for us to do some cool stuff with this. Like if it's in our graveyard, when we attack with our Shredder that has his version of Myriad, well, those 2 copies of it are going to enter. Those are ninjas. We can put Smoke Shroud on one of them. It gets in with flying. That player hopefully can't block. They lose half their life. And then it gets sacrificed at the end of combat, putting Smoke Shroud back into the graveyard so that we can have it re-enter the next time that happens with one of our other Shredder copies. Or maybe this is all happening before we get our commander out. Then we get our commander out, Smoke Shroud goes on it. Pretty good. Lots of fun things to do with this. We're not like a Ninja's, Kindred deck, so it's not here to help too much in those ways, but just being able to make our 6/7 commander into a 7/8 flying commander, that's already pretty good. 7 power means you have to hit 3 times, and that player's out with commander damage. Just saying, it's a fun card in this deck, especially when we have stuff that's leaving the battlefield. So that is our evasion section. We're going to talk about our protection section next. We've seen all of these already. except for one. So Supernatural Stamina and Fake Your Own Death are both scam cards. Doesn't really protect our creatures, but it lets us get them back when they die. Runaway Together can protect one of our creatures because if our commander, for example, is targeted with a removal spell, we can just bounce it. It's an instant speed bounce, and we get rid of another creature in the process. Cunning Rhetoric protects us in a light way because it disincentivizes opponents from attacking us, since they'd have to give us access to one of their cards from their library. And Deadeye Navigator, just like Runaway Together, gives us the ability to blink it and whatever creature it's paired with in order to protect it or that creature from removal spells. The last card in this section is Swiftfoot Boots. 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Haste can be relevant in our deck, especially with our commander. Hexproof is even more so. We want to be able to protect our commander and cast all the spells that they're able to give to us, so the Swifties are here to help us do that. That's our protection section. Next we have our recursion section. These are cards that bring cards back from the graveyard. Rat King, if we sacrifice 3 rats and tap the king, we can bring a creature back from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and we can get back every other creature that has that same name, which isn't relevant in this deck, but yeah, just the cost of 3 rats and tap, and we get something back into play tapped. Smoke Shroud brings itself back from the graveyard every time one of our ninjas enters, including when our commander re-enters from the command zone if they have already been killed. That's pretty good too. Ninja Teen lets us sneak things into play, and that's pretty great, directly from the graveyard. And Victimize lets us bring back 2 creatures at the cost of 1, which again turns on our commander's disappear ability. That's our recursion section. Our last section of spells is our token section. Just to notice that these are things that we can do to supplement the number of creatures we have in the deck, and that can be either sacrificed or exiled or used as fodder to turn on disappear. Blade of Selves gives the equipped creature Myriad, making Myriad tokens. Foot Chopper comes with a 1/1 Black Ninja. So I guess we could put Smoke Shroud on this. It is a ninja. Rat King gives us these 1/1 rat tokens at the beginning of our end step if Disappear is online. Fire Navy Trebuchet lets us have a bonus 2/1 flyer attacking every turn, or every turn we attack. Elegy Acolyte, if we have hit Void by our end step, we get a 2/2 robot. Ashiok makes these 2/3 nightmare creatures that exile the top 2 cards of an opponent's library when that opponent is attacked by that creature, or actually, I guess it doesn't have to be that same creature. We can attack opponent A and then exile cards from opponent B's library. Yeah, when we attack or block with those creatures. Gross. Shredder makes token copies of himself in a Myriad-esque way. Tasha makes these 3/3 black demon creature tokens when we cast a spell we don't own. We've seen Mirror Room making a reflection that's otherwise a copy of a creature we control, but we haven't seen Extravagant Replication. This is in this deck because it's fun. For the same reason that Mirror Room is fun, because it makes a copy of a creature we control, and that might be a creature that we stole from an opponent. We can get an extra one of our own, plus the one we stole. But Extravagant Replication is 4 and double blue for an enchantment that says at the beginning of our upkeep, create a token that's a copy of another target non-land permanent you control. So this can be, just like with Mirror Room, a way to turn on our commander's disappear ability. We just make a token copy of a legendary creature and legend rule away the copy. But we can also copy something like our Coin of Mastery, so we can make more treasures every turn. We can copy a creature that we've stolen from an opponent, or a creature that we already control. As long as it's a non-land and it's not Extravagant Replication itself, we get a free one every turn, and this is just a good, fun way to add more spice to our play. Just a nice way to give us more value, you know. Yeah, I just think it's a cool card. It's originally from the new Capenna Commander decks, which I love, so yeah, Extravagant Replication's in here for a good time. And that covers all of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basic lands. We're running 8 islands and 11 swamps for a total of 19 basics. That's pretty solid. 19 basics is right around where I want to be. I want about 18 to 20%, maybe a little more of my deck to be basic lands, so I can always make sure that I have plenty of untapped sources of mana that are in my colors, so I can play my spells. The relevance for the amount of lands is going to come up soon. I will say this deck is a little bit more black than it is blue. We could do this mix a little differently, but this has worked well for me so far. We're running Fetid Pools. This is a bicycle land. That means it comes in tapped, but it is a island swamp, so it is a dual typed land. So it taps for blue or black. So a tapped dual with basic types is pretty good. It also cycles for 2 generic mana, meaning when it's in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. We might do this if we, again, like with the Mind Stone, if we're desperate for a card, or if it's just late in the game and we don't need any more mana, we can at least trade this in for something else. We're running Dimir Aqueduct. I don't run the bounce lands that much anymore, but they are very cool, especially in Commander. So this is a land that enters tapped, and when it enters, we return a land we control to its owner's hand, which turns on Disappear because it's a permanent we control leaving the battlefield. So yeah, this is our land drop turning on our commander's ability. That's already great. And it taps for a blue and a black. That is 2 mana. So even though we have lost a mana source, we're playing this and it makes 2 mana. So we're down a land, but we're not down mana, even though it comes in tapped. It just works for us next turn. It's also the case that this is really good if we are in a situation where we're trying to make sure we hit all our land drops every turn. So if it's like turn 3, we've got 3 mana from the lands we've got 2 mana already from the lands we've already played. We can tap that mana, or tap those lands to make that mana, and then play the Aqueduct and bounce one of our lands after we've tapped it for mana. That's pretty good. The next turn, we've got 3 mana. We've got access to 3 mana. 1 from the basic we had already had in play that we didn't bounce, and the Aqueduct. Now we play that basic we have in play, and we get to make our land drop guaranteed for that turn as well. The only thing you want to do is be careful with this, because if it's the first land you play, you've got to bounce itself. It's the only land we have, so it bounces back to our hand. If it's the second turn and you haven't played a creature either turn, or haven't cast a spell either turn, then in Commander, you're going to have played a basic land or something first turn. Second turn, you'll be bouncing that back to your hand, and now you're at 8 cards and you have to go to discard. That's not great. Notably, though, the one thing I haven't said is if you have this in your hand, you can use this every turn to just turn on Disappear by using your land drop for it. You play this card, you bounce it, you use it to bounce itself back to your hand. You've made your land drop for the turn and you don't have a land in play to show for it, but you do have Disappear online. So that's not a bad play. Pretty sweet. Next is Drowned Catacomb. This is a check land. It comes in tapped unless we control an island or a swamp, and it taps for blue or black. We have, like I mentioned, 19 basic islands and swamps, but we also have a bicycle land, which is also an island swamp. We also have a Tango land, which is also an island swamp. Those are our typed duels. So the check land doesn't care if our island or swamp in play is basic. So we've got 21 different cards in our deck that will make the Drowned Catacomb come in untapped. That's great. If you would like to, upgrade this, you certainly can. I would upgrade it to the Shipwreck Marsh, which is a slow land. That might be a little bit more consistent, but it's also a little bit more expensive. So I think Drowned Catacomb is a great choice for this deck. I should mention, if you want to upgrade Fetid Pools, I would do Watery Grave. It's the shock land. It's a dual-typed land. We can't cycle it. It's too bad, but it could come in untapped. We're also running Darkwater Catacombs. This is a filter land. It has the exact same text as our Dimir Signet. We've got to pay a mana into it to tap it, but when we do, we tap it for 2 mana in our colors. Good, fixes our colors. That's what we need. Next are our fixing lands. We're running Command Tower, which is Arcane Signet as a land, same text. Comes in untapped, taps for blue or black, It's an untapped duel. Great, we're going to run that. We would run that if it were a tap land, because we are. Here's Path of Ancestry. It comes in tapped, has the same text as our command tower, and also says when we cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we get a scry. So that's pretty good. We have in this deck a bunch of humans and some ninjas that we could be casting. So yeah, we've got at least 11 cards in this deck that we're able to get a scry off of, including our commander, because of course it shares types with itself. No other Ultrams in this deck. Sorry, Krang. But yeah, pretty good. We are also running Tainted Isle. I don't usually get to run the Tainted lands, but this deck is a little bit more swampy than it is islandy. So this is a land that comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or it can tap for blue or black, but only if we control a swamp. That includes our dual-typed lands that have the swamp type. So this is a land that is an untapped source of mana, and colorless, or colored mana, without too much of a weight. Pretty good. Beyond those three lands, we have Temple of the False God. I know not everyone loves Temple of the False God. I think it's great. This is a great for the kind of decks I build, at least. It's a soul land, so it taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. It just doesn't tap for any mana at all unless we have at least 4 other lands. So 5 or more lands, including itself. So early on, if your opening hand is, I don't know, a basic island and a Temple of the False God, you probably want a mulligan if you don't have any other mana sources in it. But Temple of the False God, if it's your 5th land, jumps you from 5 mana or from 4 mana to 6 mana. So it is acceleration in your land base, just not early on. And that's fine in a deck that has a 6 mana commander. After that, we have 3 soft fetches. Maestro's Theater and Obscura Storefront are basically the same card for us. They are a land that when they enter, we sacrifice it immediately. And when we do, we can search for an island or a swamp, and Maestro's Theater lets us look for a mountain, but we don't have mountains in the deck. And we can put that basic onto the battlefield tapped, shuffle, and gain a life. So a free life for us, but also a free way to turn on Disappear and find us one of our colors, whichever one we need more of. Maestro's Theater is all of this. This is true for the Obscura Storefront as well, except rather than mountains, the storefront can also find a plains. Otherwise, it's the same thing. So pretty good for us as a way to. It is slow. I don't usually run these kind of fetches in my decks because obviously a land that finds a basic that comes in tapped is worse than a dual land that comes in tapped, because the dual land can produce 2 colors of mana and it's tapped either way. However, in this deck, the storefront and the theater both give us a way to turn on our commander's Disappear ability, and that's great. Myriad Landscape does as well. This is a tap land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So either 2 basic islands or 2 basic swamps. Put them on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. So this is slow. It comes in tapped, we have to pay for it and sacrifice it, and the lands themselves come in tapped. But it is 1 land drop that turns into 2 lands and turns on our commander's Disappear ability. Pretty okay. That covers our fixing lands. We're going to move on to our Underground River. This is a pain land. It has the same text as our Talisman. Taps for colorless, taps for blue or black if we let it do a damage to us, comes in untapped. Everything I said about the Talisman is still true here. Great. We have a reveal land as well, Choked Estuary. Taps for blue or black, and as it enters, we can reveal an island or a swamp card from our hand, and if we don't, it comes in tapped. So this is totally fine. Again, we've got 21 cards in the deck that are islands or swamps. If we have one of those in our hand, then great. The estuary will come in untapped. Otherwise, it's a tap land, and that's fine. If you would want to upgrade this, I would say the Verge land, the Gloomlake Verge in these colors, would be pretty good. Similarly, you could upgrade Underground River, quote unquote, I guess, to kind of side grade to a Clearwater Pathway. The pathways are really fun. They're modal double-faced lands that come in as an untapped blue source or black source. Not a dual land, but it gives you whatever you need. And I guess I should mention, of these lands up here, I don't think it's that much of an upgrade, but technically you could upgrade one of these storefronts or even the Myriad Landscape to Fabled Passage, which is a fetch land that finds a basic, but when that basic comes in, if you have 4 or more total lands, it untaps itself. We've got Temple of Deceit as our scry land. It's a tap land, taps for blue or black, and when it comes in, it scries 1. So it's unconditional scry as opposed to Path of Ancestry, but it only happens once, and that's totally fine. If you want to upgrade this to an Undercity Sewers Surveil land, that would be pretty good, but like with all of these upgrades, much more expensive. Sunken Hollow is our Tango land that I mentioned. This is an island swamp that therefore taps for blue or black, and it comes in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. We've got 19 basics in this library, so the likelihood that this will happen is pretty good. Again, if you want to upgrade this, Watery Grave, the shock land, is where I would go with it, but I like having the Bicycle and Tango lands in my deck, so yeah. Finally, we have these 4 utility lands. Bonder's Enclave is not a land I usually run in a Dimir deck, but our commander is a 6/7. So this is the untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and tap to just draw a card, but only if we have a creature of power 4 or greater. We have plenty of creatures that are big. We're going to be stealing a bunch of creatures from our opponents, and our commander is that big. So if we're looking for card draw, here's some in our land base. Same is true of Castle Lochthwain. This is a land that enters tapped unless we control a swamp. It doesn't have to be basic, just a swamp. It taps for black, and if we pay 1 and double black and tap it, we can draw a card, and then we lose life equal to the number of cards in our hand, including that one we just drew. So expensive expensive in the sense of life, but it's worth it if we really need that land or that card in our hand. Then we can pay the life and pay the mana. If we're not doing anything else with it, we might as well. And this just makes colorless mana or colored mana for us. So great. Demolition Field is next. As I have often said, the kind of decks I build are for pods that, are looking to just have fun playing the game. Most of the time, you don't want to see any mana denial in those pods. People don't want to see their lands getting blown up. But you do have to have at least one answer for a problematic non-basic land. If somebody is playing Glacial Chasm, you can't get damage into them so you can win the game. So that's stopping you from enacting your game plan. Likewise, if someone's running a Voltron deck and they've made their commander into like a 17 power creature and they're running a Rogue's Passage, well then you can't block that creature, so it's going to stop you. It's working too well for them. So any non-basic land that is helping its controller too much or hurting us or hurting our ability to do our thing is fair game if you do it this way. This is I'll make the case for this. Demolition Field is an untapped land that taps for colorless. We can also pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic that an opponent controls, and that opponent then gets to search their library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield untapped, and shuffle. And so do we. So neither player, neither we nor they, are down a land, but we've gotten rid of that problematic non-basic. We've answered a threat, or we've answered an answer, either way. And as long as both players still have basics in their library, we're not even getting tap lands in the process, so no one is down mana on it. Seems pretty good. Finally, we are running Rogue's Passage because our commander is a 6/7 and can get bigger in several different ways, and we can also steal other huge creatures from our opponents, just depending on what they're running. So this is an untapped land that taps for colorless. We can pay 4 and tap it to make a creature unblockable this turn. Like I mentioned, good for us and our creatures, including our commander. We can also use this politically by saying, hey, I know opponent A, I know you want to attack opponent B, but you're afraid of their blocks. I can make one of your creatures unblockable with my Rogue's Passage. Just leave me alone for a turn cycle or 2. And they'll say, oh yeah, that sounds good. Go ahead and activate it. And we'll say, no. You have to attack first, because if we activate it now before you've declared an attack, you could then declare it against us and we can't block it. And they would say, oh, that's fair. Yeah, I wouldn't do that, but sure. I'm going to go ahead and declare an attack with my big creature. And we say, all right, before blocks are declared, we activate our Rogue's Passage because we are a player of honor. And we want that turn or 2 of being left alone. However, rather than play Rogue's Passage in a political way, you can also just surprise people with it. Maybe opponent B is attacking opponent C with a huge creature, and opponent C is going to be able to block. But if they weren't able to block, it would be beneficial to us because it might knock opponent C out of the game. So we just say, hey, opponent B, you're a huge creature, activate Rogue's Passage, it's unblockable. We don't even make a deal about it because we're spending essentially 5 mana, 4 plus the tap of the Rogue's Passage, to use opponent B's creature and attack step to harm our other opponent. We're using their resources to hit opponent C. That just helps us out. And it's hysterical every time you do that because people don't expect it. So yeah, most of the time we're using Rogue's Passage for ourselves or for mana, but we can do some tricks with it, and it's pretty fun to do so. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new TMNT Commander decks every Thursday through mid-April when Secrets of Strixhaven drops, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or deck style. Spoilers, I've already made my last deck, so let me know anyway, and I'm happy to try and work in another one if you've got one in mind. But yeah, that should do it. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe. Ring that bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Consider becoming a member of the channel if you want to. If you want to maybe see my videos before they go live. And most of all, remember that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.